and 4031 82nd Street. Kathy Coe is here to discuss.
Hello again, Commission. A public hearing was held on May 23rd, 2018 for this project. 12 speakers provided oral testimonies in favor of the applications and 9 speakers testified in opposition. On June 4th, the applicant submitted responses to the department regarding concerns raised at the public hearing. Understanding the concerns of the Commission and the public regarding the proximity of the project area to Elmhurst Hospital, the applicant team has met with Israel Roca, the CEO of Elmhurst Hospital, on a number of occasions since the public hearing. Mr. Roca is aware of the applications and the proposed development, and the Elmhurst Hospital has not submitted testimony. And as a follow-up question to the public hearing, a letter was also provided by Thomas Gretsch, CEO of the Queens Chamber of Commerce, which is in support of the applications to confirm that the Elmhurst Hospital is a member of the Queens Chamber of Commerce, as is nearly all healthcare providers and major hospitals in Queens County. There were a number of concerns raised regarding potential traffic conflicts on Baxter Avenue as a result of the proposed development. As explained at the public hearing, the applicant proposes a 128-space attended parking garage, 48 of which are required under the proposed C45X district. Following the public hearing, the applicant team conducted additional visual data collection to provide a snapshot of bus and ambulance activity in addition to updates on the proposed parking and loading activities. So first, to further describe the bus route around this project area and the block. The Q29 bus route here is shown in blue. It runs northbound on Baxter Avenue between Ithaca Street to Hampton Street, as well as to Roosevelt Avenue, adjacent to the project site. As shown in the diagram, the closest stop is located on the southeast corner of Hampton Street and Baxter Avenue, as seen in this diagram, outlined in red. And the Q29 bus runs in both directions on Hampton Street, and when headed westbound, the bus makes a right turn onto Baxter Avenue and a slight left turn onto 83rd Street at the fork before making a left onto Roosevelt Avenue to continue circling the entire block. With the exception of Roosevelt Avenue, 82nd Street, Ithaca Street, and Baxter Avenue are all one-way roads, with Baxter Avenue 40 feet wide containing 2 travel lanes. The terminus for the 29 bus is located on 82nd Street, closer to Roosevelt Avenue, and when proceeding from its first stop, it heads down south to Glendale. The applicant has provided more detail on the parking and loading activities on Baxter Avenue with an updated site plan with additional queuing spaces for vehicles using the car elevator. According to the applicant, vehicles exiting or entering the parking garage would not obstruct the eastern travel lane on Baxter Avenue, which has 2 travel lanes, and therefore would not cause conflicts with vehicles turning onto Hampton Street, which would be traveling in the western travel lane on Baxter. The subcellar parking garage of the proposed development would be accessed by 2 car elevators operated by attendants. These car elevators typically take 2 to 3 minutes from a vehicle pulling into the garage to travel down to the subcellar and back up to accept another vehicle. There is reservoir space for 6 vehicles provided, which is intended to prevent backup onto Baxter Avenue. And the applicant states it's unlikely that all spaces would be used at once, since at least one spot needs to be free in order to allow vehicles to enter and exit the site. And this is to remain a flexible scenario with attendants using their judgment on handling vehicle capacity. Trucks accessing the 2 loading berths would drive up past the curb cut and then back into the site in one movement within the western travel lane on Baxter Avenue. A standard 30-foot long truck backing into the loading dock would only use the western travel lane and therefore not obstruct the eastern travel lane and not cause conflicts with vehicles turning from Hampton Street. And according to additional analysis conducted by the applicant team, the project area, demand in and out of the parking lot and loading dock are relatively low and would be accommodated by what's proposed, and it would occur mainly before the PM peak traffic period of 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Target has also stated that for Target small format stores, deliveries are usually within the range of 2 to 3 per day for general merchandise, in addition to 1 food delivery. And ideally, deliveries would occur during non-peak traffic hours, avoiding morning and evening rush hours. And the applicant is working with Target and will work with other retail tenants to figure out a possible delivery service that works to minimize impact. The applicant also conducted manual turning movement counts at the intersection of Hampton Street and Baxter Avenue in September 2017 during AM and PM peak hours. The data was consistent with New York State DOT data, which estimated roughly 5,600 vehicles traveling northbound in a 24-hour period along Baxter. The additional visual data collection was collected after the public hearing on May 25th, 2018, between 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m., which is the peak period of PM traffic on Baxter Avenue. Generally, the applicant team observed that the traffic was light and on-street parking on either side of Baxter Avenue was 50% or more vacant, filling up only after 5 p.m. A capacity analysis was conducted at the unsignalized intersection of Hampton Street and Baxter Avenue in terms of its ability to accommodate existing volumes, and it was determined that the level of service at the intersection does not hit the limit of acceptable delay. And so, thus, it was concluded that Hampton Street and Baxter Avenue are local streets with low traffic volumes. And in terms of pedestrian safety, the applicant determined that this is not a high crash area for pedestrians and bicyclists, as per NYC DOT crash data. This slide shows the area in context of street directions. There were concerns raised at the public hearing regarding possible interference with existing ambulance activity as a result of the proposed development. As you can see here, Elmhurst Hospital's EMS Station 46 entrance is located on Baxter Avenue, 1 block south of the project area. Baxter Avenue is a two-way road at that location running north to Roosevelt Avenue and south to Broadway. At a fork in the road, which is at a triangle park just south of the project area, is where Baxter Avenue turns into a one-way road northbound. To head south, vehicles would drive south on 82nd Street past this fork, which turns into Baxter towards Broadway. According to the applicant, ambulances carrying patients to Elmhurst Hospital do not use Baxter adjacent to the site as it heads north away from the hospital. While ambulances dispatched from Elmhurst Hospital or returning to other EMS stations or private ambulance dispatch locations can turn left onto Baxter from Elmhurst Hospital to head north, it is not the only way out of EMS Station 46. Emergency vehicles can turn right onto Baxter and proceed left or right onto Broadway, which is a 4-lane, two-way road that also runs to Roosevelt Avenue in order to respond to emergency calls originating east, west, or south of the hospital. And on May 25th, during that additional visual data collection on Baxter Avenue, between Ithaca Street and Roosevelt Avenue, the applicant team observed 4 ambulances driving past the project site on Baxter Avenue, none at the same time, with only one using its sirens, which is an FDNY ambulance. 2 of the 4 were private ambulances, most likely returning to holding stations at other EMS stations after making a drop at Elmhurst Hospital. It was concluded that the number of ambulances that utilize Baxter Avenue adjacent to the project area is low, and this does not appear to be the primary route out of EMS Station 46. At the public hearing, the applicant team was asked about the developer's background and experience in similar projects. The Heskel Group has been developing in Queens and Manhattan since 1975 and will be the developer of the proposed building. The Heskel Group has maintained and completed and maintained many projects, 2 of which include a project on Austin Street in Forest Hills, Queens, which is a 2-story commercial building with local and chain retail, as well as a building at 800 10th Avenue in Manhattan, which is a similarly mixed-use building with retail and residential uses. At the hearing, there were also questions about Target's established lease in the proposed development and its implications on retail uses throughout the building. Target is a confirmed tenant that would lease space in the as-of-right development as well. The memorandum of lease recorded against the proposed development includes certain prohibited uses. The purpose of these prohibitions is to exclude similar competitors and uses that are inconsistent with the neighborhood's retail environment. The applicant states that there is no intention to discriminate against or exclude small or local businesses. There are a number of types of establishments that can be located in the available retail space, such as restaurants, hair salons, coffee shops, electronic stores, clothing stores, pet shops, medical offices, and more. The following slides provides a comprehensive list of prohibited uses as stated in the memorandum of lease. Something to note is that this is the interpretation of the clauses, as the memorandum refers to sections of the lease that is not available to DCP, but to the best that we can interpret, the following is a list of prohibited uses. And I'll continue through these slides to point out just a few uses of note. Otherwise, members of the commission should have hard copies to look at more closely and to point to after the presentation. Uses such as pharmacies or groceries of any size would be prohibited unless Target does not operate such uses on the premises for a period of roughly 18 months. Since Target Expresses don't always have groceries or pharmacies as the big box type of Targets tend to, it is possible that these uses could be allowed over a period of time. In addition, beauty stores under the brand name Ulta or Sephora are also prohibited unless they are incidental sales in other stores, as well as more obvious uses such as warehouse operations that deal with assembling, manufacturing, distilling, mining, as well as any dumping, disposing, or incineration of garbage, but not applying to garbage compactors or recycling areas. Other prohibited uses could include auction or bankruptcy houses, auto sales, car washes, body shops, vet hospitals, bars or restaurants whose annual gross revenues from the sale of alcoholic beverages exceed 30% of their gross revenues, any spa or fitness center exceeding 3,500 square feet of floor area, except in community facility space, any training or educational facility, unless it's an incidental on-site employee training as part of conducting business, any restaurant or bar, unless the establishment does not have live music or has installed sound and waterproofing, or the landlord indemnifies Target against all damages. And again, we can speak to any other uses that are of concern later on. So moving on, at the public hearing, 2 representatives from 2 separate houses of worship also mentioned the idea of a nonprofit business incubator space to occupy the community facility space in the proposed development. Since the public hearing, a letter was submitted by Bishop Mitchell Taylor, co-founder and CEO of Urban Upbound, which is a nonprofit that provides social services for residents living in public housing and other low and moderate income neighborhoods in Queens, Harlem, and the Bronx. In addition to voicing his support, the letter described a vision for a nonprofit business incubator space, which was guided by community stakeholders, seeing it fitting for this thriving commercial neighborhood. So this incubator space would be a place where small business owners and budding entrepreneurs can receive services to grow and build their businesses. And examples of services provided would be to obtain financial and tax advice, desk space with internet access, computers, business services, and assistance in finding affordable office or retail space in the neighborhood. Thank you, and I can take any questions at this time.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, how are you? I have to say that the hospital's lack of input is really conspicuous here. This is a Trauma 1 center, and if you look at the map, I would like the larger map. You can see that Baxter feeds onto 83rd, and that's the only northbound route between 77th and 83rd Street. And as such, it actually does get a lot of traffic. And I have to say that this report, the traffic report, also fails to mention anything with respect to Baxter and how it feeds onto 83rd Street. There's very, very little mention of 83rd. I understand Baxter is 40 feet wide. 83rd Street is not 40 feet wide. And it's where buses stop. It's a terminus. I actually was there myself, took pictures, and during rush hour, there were at least 2 buses on the right side at Baxter on 83rd Street, parking all on the left and 1 lane of traffic. It took me 6 minutes to drive through that intersection at 11:23 in the afternoon. What? Yeah. Afternoon, 11 to 2, that time period. And I understand that's peak period, but I'm pleased that they think that only 1 ambulance in 2.5 hours passing through doesn't make a difference. But a level 1 trauma center has to meet a minimum threshold for treating severely injured patients. And for folks who are living north of the hospital, particularly in the area that's well serviced, 82nd Street, Jackson Heights is a very dense community. Those minutes and seconds can be really quite significant. I think I have a few issues. One, Target deliveries. If we were to look at how those trucks back up out of the project area, I understand they're saying you can pass the trucks on Baxter Street, but they actually block 83rd Street. And they would do so, whenever they need to go forward and back up. I'm not sure how they would back up if their car is behind the truck. I just see that's exactly where I got caught for at that intersection for about 3 minutes and then going north another block for about 3.5. Oh, gosh. Ideally deliveries would be during non-peak periods. What kind of commitment do we have from Target that they're not going to, restrict ambulances that go through? Again, there's one ambulance, there are 4 ambulances that went through over 2.5 periods. One had its siren on. I hope none of us are at the other end of that ambulance when they need it. I can't see the hospital. I don't understand why the hospital's not weighing in here.
It's not for absence of outreach. We have reached out. They've chosen not to participate.
I understand that. And I also, there are questions that the traffic study says it does not appear to be a primary route from Elmer's Hospital. I don't understand why the hospital isn't weighing in. We should know whether it is or it isn't, and how many ambulances are going through in order to make a decision that's going to affect public safety. In a community that, at an intersection, which is one of the only ways to get north. And, I have to say, even in this report, they say, that, ambulance is leaving. It's not even the most convenient way to get out. Ambulance is leaving. They said, it's a two-way street that also runs to Roosevelt Avenue, and in order to respond to emergency calls originating east, west, and south of the hospital. What about calls originating north of the hospital? I'm glad there's no mention of getting north of the hospital here. There are many people who live north of the hospital who would be affected by the inability to get there easily. So that alone causes significant issues for me. I have to say I don't have issues with the density. It's a transit-oriented location. That's not the issue here. It absolutely is public safety. And without the hospital weighing in one way or another, just to inform us of their practices, how can we make a decision that would impact the ability of any of us? And I'm one of those people who would be, in fact, impacted, with the challenges associated with this, because the hospital is 1 block to the left. So I hope that we all take that into consideration as we make our determinations.
If I might note, one way we've been grappling with these issues is that the request before us is for rezoning. So it's not like a large scale where we could or a special permit where we could put more conditions on it. What we can do is note in the report, I think, the very significant and serious issues that you've raised. And as we know, the council has a far broader remit than we do. And I think that we can signal concerns. I picked up, as you did, on the fact that with respect to loading movements, it said ideally. There's a difference between ideally and a council-imposed commitment requirement to have loading during non-peak hours. So I would think that we have the ability through our report to send a message about these considerations. And again, with respect to the hospital, it is not for absence of trying. It has been a conscious decision not to participate.
And that's, I understand they have the right, but I do feel that it makes it very challenging to make a decision on this land use absent some very basic information with respect to life safety.
Commissioner Deleuze.
I just really appreciate Commissioner Ortiz's, bringing up these items and highlighting them. I mean, I think the testimony also did a very good job of that. I think the folks that came were very thoughtful. I'm just wondering if we happen to know since the hearing, if, I guess I was a bit dismayed that at the hearing it was reported that the owner hadn't met with the local community group who was obviously very organized. And I'm just wondering if we happen to have any further information about that.
To my knowledge, they have not met, but it's not necessarily one-sided, one not wanting to meet with the other. I think they're just not really communicating much.
I guess it would be helpful if the applicant would respond to that.
I think we do have time, so we can reach out again. Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Well, I certainly came away from the hearing with the same feeling of dismay that Commissioner Deleuze mentioned. I share the traffic concerns, but unlike Commissioner Ortiz, I'm also very concerned about the density sought for this location. It's basically a doubling of the residential density and a doubling of the commercial density. And as one of the less impassioned members of the community characterized it, it's an affront to the character of the surrounding area. And I've been persuaded to go along on projects where I thought the density was out of scale, where the community has engaged with the developer and has thought about these issues and has concluded that there are significant community benefits in, although I hate that phrase, there are significant advantages to the community that they would be receiving in exchange for what might otherwise be considered out of scale development. But I mean, here, the fact that the applicant didn't testify, the applicant didn't come speak to us, the traffic study seemed inadequate, there didn't seem to be any community engagement, leaves me really looking closely at the difference between the as-of-right alternative and what is being sought here. And the difference really is between as-of-right and what they're seeking. It's 4 stories or 51 feet in height. It's second floor commercial use, so a doubling of the intensity of commercial use. It's a total of 43 additional dwelling units, but only 24 total affordable dwelling units. And looking at this, I just have a hard time concluding that for 24 affordable housing units under the mandatory program, that all of these other burdens are an appropriate price. I think it's, right now, it's seeming to me like a pretty high price to pay for 24 mandatory units.
That actually was a question that was posed to the mayor at the town hall in the district. And as the mayor pointed out, more sharply than I ever would to you, Commissioner Levin, he noted that the residents of those 24 units might think differently about it. And I will note, just from the department's perspective, that we believe that we agree with Commissioner Ortiz that the density, that the scale is appropriate. Certainly my remaining concerns are with respect to the traffic pattern as identified by Commissioner Ortiz. But we will reach back out again to the applicant for a follow-up on the questions that both commissioners have raised. Yes, Kelly.
Yes, I also have, I'm very troubled by the traffic situation there. And I agree with Commissioner Levin that the transportation consultant left a lot to be desired. Not knowing prior to the presentation what buses ran along the route, if any. There was testimony, or there was at least comments from the audience that there were multiple buses at that location, and yet the response that we got today seemed to indicate that there was only one. So I was wondering if we could verify the bus activity along that route.
I can do that.
We have our adjunct city planner.
The Q29 loops around that site and then comes back and loops in the other direction. So it's actually, it sort of goes around this site in both directions. So you have some buses going, north and some buses going south because they're all going down Hampton Street, So I think that might have been why they were talking about multiple buses, but it's one
They were
it's one
talking
bus
about,
route.
they said that there were multiple routes.
There are routes on Roosevelt and the route, I was just looking at the bus map, that's why, it's just the Q29.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only one that actually goes around the entire project site. There are very close, other bus routes in very close proximity.
Yeah, it's the same bus.
Other questions? Okay, so we will bring this back at our next review session.
Thank you.
Yes.
When are we going to vote on this?
I think that we have this on for we could possibly vote it out on the June 27th hearing, but we can, I think, have time for, I think July 9th is the last day. If we were so inclined, we can hold a special hearing.
A special meeting on the day of a review session.
Review session.
Okay, yes.
One last comment. The other issue is the parking. We're okay with the density. It's a transit-oriented location, but they're requiring, or they're providing much more parking than is required. And I know that that's allowed under zoning, but I do think this is something to flag. If we are serious about sustainability, thinking about how, because these overlays, these commercial overlays at transit locations often don't reflect the transit availability, and they have, the parking requirements. They're either requirements are either too high or people can provide much more. I think it's worth thinking about in the future, because this site with the 2 elevators, each of which is going to take 2 to 3 minutes to load, and they're 128 spots. Creates a whole nother issue. And if they were restricted to what they were required to, I would feel a lot more comfortable as well.
A question based on your local knowledge. Is on-street parking at a premium? Is there a desire among some in the neighborhood for off-street parking? Or is there generally an availability of on-street for those who do have cars?
There's definitely a demand for off-street parking among residents, for sure. There should be noted that there are national chains located here to the north on 82nd Street. None have parking, and they absolutely function very well. And in fact, they're growing. So, it's not necessary for the retail, but certainly residents want them. But we would think that if someone chooses to locate half a block from a transit stop, we can encourage them to use transit and not necessarily create more of a traffic situation because they own a car. This should be for people who don't need cars.
It's interesting to hear an approach that Commissioner Levin and I frequently share in Manhattan be expressed in a transit-rich neighborhood in another borough. Okay, so this will be back 2 weeks from now.
Yep. All right. Absent any other business, this concludes the City Planning Commission review session for June 11th, 2018. The time is 4:16. Hold on.